What are some of the big, big lies that we have been told our entire life that once the truth is revealed, kind of change our perceptions around everything? I got a list of them today that we're going to go through. We're going to talk about Hitler and Germany in World War II. We're going to talk about OJ Simpson. We're going to talk about the moon landing. We're going to talk about climate change. And we're going to talk about the Las Vegas bombing. So stay tuned. We break down some of these lies that we've been told our entire lives. Hey, welcome to the show. Molly here. Today we're going to talk about lies, some of the big lies that we have been told our entire life. I did a part one on this recently. I'll put the link to that one in the description if you're interested. And I got a long list of lies that didn't make it into this one. So there might be a part three. And one thing I want to caveat before I get into some of the specifics here, these are things that I've kind of learned the truth about over a period of years. And I've heard about the truth from several sources, some of them books, most of them, honestly, from kind of Telegram groups and even Twitter. Twitter search engine is amazing, by the way, especially pre-purge, which happened in January of 2021. So I spent hours and hours just reading through these threads, and I didn't save them all. So I'm not here to provide you with evidence or try to shift your beliefs or try to convince you of anything. I do have one photo for one thing that's relevant to share with you, but for the most part, I'm going to just walk you through these new beliefs that I have. You are welcome to disagree with me. I don't really care, honestly, if you don't want to believe what I believe. Like, this is just me explaining to you some things that I have uncovered over a kind of fairly long period of time. And take it for what it is. I would recommend actually you verify with additional sources all of these things. And the tricky thing is that we live in this world where we've been taught that like certain sources are credible and certain sources are like less credible or even not credible. And that is sort of the first thing that I think needs to be challenged publicly is, are these sources like mainstream media and Wikipedia even reliable at all? Or are they complicit in this mass deception that we've been going through our whole lives? This is why I like different sources from different sort of walks of life. If they are all saying the same thing and they don't appear to be connected at all, that gives this some credibility to me. Now, I might be wrong about some of these things on this list, and I don't really know if that's the end of the world. I'm not making any big decisions or doing anything in my life necessarily about the specific things we're going to talk about today, but it's been part of a process for me to kind of have the truth revealed, see the man behind the curtain in terms of some of these lies that have led us to think life is a certain way it is. And I got some real esoteric ones, which we'll probably cover in part three. But so today, first one. Okay. My entire life, I was led to believe that Adolf Hitler died at the end of World War II. It was a gunshot wound, is possibly self-inflicted, and that kind of symbolically ended a significant part of World War II because Hitler was taken out. Okay, that's a lie. And I've read this in several books, and I have this great book I was going to show you when I left my house, so can't show you today. But it's about Antarctica and talks about how at the end of World War II, many high-ranking Nazi officials fled through a pretty elaborate tunnel system that exists in Europe. And they went in groups to Argentina, possibly Chile, or the regions kind of between Argentina and Chile. And some even went to Antarctica into some underground bases there that have been used to develop some space equipment called the Deep Space Program. The Nazis apparently have some pretty advanced technology and large facilities under the ice in Antarctica. Antarctica is a whole fascinating rabbit hole, by the way, if you have not started on that one. So the idea that Hitler died is the lie. And some people even believe that he went on to have more children who have assumed political leadership roles in our modern world. So I can't really prove it, but again, multiple people are under this belief. So it kind of changes the whole idea that Germany even necessarily lost the war. This also segues into Operation Paperclip, which you can look up on Wikipedia. And this is where many German scientists, Nazi scientists, were relocated into the United States, many of whom went to work at NASA and other kind of military industrial complex type operations. So these guys who were supposed to be like the bad guys, these evil Nazi scientists, just came and worked in the United States and lived for decades. And one of the most famous of these scientists is Werner von Braun, who actually I recently heard a very juicy theory that some people think he is Elon Musk's biological father. Very interesting. If you look at a photo of Werner von Braun next to Elon Musk, there seems to be a family resemblance. So that one I only recently learned. I don't know if that's true or not, but it is pretty clear that Werner von Braun had a very significant role in the United States for decades, and he was a pretty high ranking, some people believe even higher ranking than Adolf Hitler within the Nazi Party in Germany. All right, so that was line number one. Okay, line number two comes from a totally different lane, and it's not really a lie so much as I just was mind blown when I heard the truth about this. So when I was in college, the OJ Simpson trial went on. It lasted an entire year. It was really long. And I remember coming home from like in between classes, and we would hang out in the house that my friends and I rented, and we would watch part of the trial. And it was just excruciating how long it went on. And like many people, I had watched this sort of OJ like pursuit on TV. And I had come to the belief that OJ had done it. Like it seemed very plausible that was the case. Now, what is remarkable about the legal team, it was called the Dream Team that OJ Simpson hired. This is what I know now is they were given a very specific task, which was to get OJ off, but not point the finger at another suspect, which is generally what you might do. I'm not a defense attorney, but if my client didn't do it and I actually believed that, or even if I didn't, you want to point the finger somewhere else to create sort of this like doubt that my client did it. So they had a task though. They couldn't point the finger at anyone else. Seems weird, kind of weird. So a couple years ago, I used to work for this behavior profiler, and we were at an event, and he asked me for a favor, and I kind of said, "Yeah, sure," but I have one condition in response, which is I wanted to know if OJ Simpson was part of the MK Ultra program, and he told me no, he was not, and it's because OJ didn't do it. I was like, OJ didn't do it? Like we all kind of thought OJ did it. So if OJ didn't do it, who did? And this is when I went digging. I've known this for a while, that actually OJ Simpson had a son prior to marrying Nicole Simpson. So, the kids that we knew about in the trial, I've forgotten blanking on their names right now. Anyway, those were Nicole's kids, but OJ had a kid previously. I think his name was Jason. And there's this photo that I'm going to put up right now that shows the OJ Simpson family celebrating the verdict. And you can see there is one person in this photo who is not happy. So the thesis goes, Jason Simpson actually killed OJ, killed Nicole and Ron Brown. And OJ either figured this out or knew this or something. And maybe, we don't know the dynamics of whether or not Jason was like excluded from stuff and was just really mad at OJ or mad at Nicole or whatnot. But it looks like OJ Simpson basically took one for the team, took one for his son, and got off, but did not want to point the finger at him. So that kind of blew my mind, where a lot of people really did believe at the time that OJ Simpson was not guilty. I thought he was, because it seemed like there was a lot of circumstantial evidence, and he was sort of mad at his ex-wife for moving on, type of a thing. But could have been Jason Simpson, the son. All right. Lie number three. Again, not so much a lie as much as a spinning of the truth. So the Playboy Mansion was a honeypot. Growing up, when I would read People magazine, these types of other celebrity things, kind of thought that the Playboy Mansion was like this fun party place. And if you were cool, you got invited to go to these incredibly decadent parties there. But the whole place was wired. And similar to what we learned about a particular individual who had an island in the Caribbean, the Playboy Mansion was used as a way to blackmail politicians and other types of leaders. They would go to this party at the mansion and maybe have a few drinks and then be introduced to this pretty girl and go into a room. Maybe they hang out a little bit, blah, blah, blah. But turns out maybe pretty girl is younger than might appear. and politician man probably was married. And so it created this opportunity for blackmail, and that they would have this incriminating audio or video of said politician doing some things that would not reflect favorably for him in his career. And this was really the first honeypot thing. Now, here's what I don't get. Like, if I know this, I would expect that politicians would have known this and they wouldn't have fallen for it, but I guess they did. So the Playboy Mansion was probably more complicit to organized crime and potentially some of the three-letter agencies that participate and support organized crime, and it might have been more elaborate than it looked like from the photos of People magazine. All right, number 4. Now, this one surprises me that people have not figured out, but this is that, like, climate change is a scam. And we kind of found this out. Like, I'm old enough to remember Al Gore's original world tour where he had this PowerPoint. He traveled around the world by private jet, talking about the dangers of climate change. And this was a long time ago. So we were by now all supposed to be underwater. Florida shouldn't even exist anymore. And what happened shortly after that, maybe like a year or two after this, it was debunked. Some of the scientists who had faked or changed the data kind of confessed to that. And I had thought back then, like, okay, glad that this scam has been put to rest. But hasn't really, people don't seem to remember that detail very much. And as we've moved on, back then it was also called global warming, because the whole idea was that everything was getting hot. And then it kind of switched to getting cold. And so they had to change the label to be climate change, which doesn't even make any sense. So if you're not aware yet of that particular lion scam, I think you might have some research to do. So a lot of current policies from the kind of New World Order type government, especially around things like carbon credits, are going to tie into this outdated lie. So if they're going to expect us to monitor our carbon usage, which actually that's the other sort of scam, is carbon and carbon dioxide are very different things, right? All organic life forms are made of carbon. And so if you want to reduce carbon, does that mean you want to reduce us? And even carbon dioxide is a gas exhaled by mammals, which are people. So if you really wanted to reduce the carbon dioxide footprint of the world, that would mean reducing people, which would tie into the Georgia Guidestones, another thing we haven't really covered yet on this show. But number 6 is related to number 5. And this one shocked me. I have a son, and most of his like very early years, toddler years, was obsessed with dinosaurs. I've seen every Jurassic Park movie many, many times. We had lots of dinosaur toys. And it never occurred to me until fairly recently, when I was sort of told the truth about this, is that the whole dinosaur thing is a scam. Dinosaurs didn't exist. If you think about it, what is the evidence we have around dinosaurs? We have like a couple of bones that have been found, right? How did you go from finding a couple of bones to these elaborate visuals of what a dinosaur looked like, what it ate, how it interacted with other dinosaurs, what the skin was like, these sort of connections to ecosystems? Like the depth of the dinosaur story is quite elaborate. Kind of crazy. This one is still hard for me to believe. Like, there's no dinosaurs? Are you serious? And there's a video. I bookmarked it. I will insert it into here, and you can see this is not something, again, that I'm making up myself, but the dinosaur thing is kind of crazy.
You know how dinosaurs don't really exist? They never existed. They were invented by the Royal Society in 1841. Fact.
The class Dinosauria was originally defined by Sir Richard Owen of the Royal Society and Superintendent of the British Museum Natural History Department in 1842.
All dinosaur bones are replicas made by chicken bones from China. True story. And you know why you can't use real dinosaur bones? Because they claim that they're still radioactive because of the asteroid 66 million years ago.
In what was known as the Great Dinosaur Rush, or the Bone Wars, Edward Drinker Cope of the Academy of Natural Sciences and Othniel Marsh of the Peabody Museum of Natural History began a lifelong rivalry and passion for dinosaur hunting. They started out as friends, but became bitter enemies during a legendary feud involving double-crossing, slander, bribery, theft, spying, and destruction of bones by both parties. None of them once claimed to find a complete skeleton either, so all their work involved reconstructions. In fact, to this day, no complete skeleton has ever been found.
Okay? So now that you realize that dinosaurs are already an absurd farce. Absurd, guys. When you look into the bone wars and how many of them have been proven false, there is not one single skeleton of a dinosaur that exists in the world. None. The engineers have proven that none of the bodies would work. All the guts would fall out. Like a brontosaurus, stegosaurus. You can't prove the Earth was here 66 million years ago. I'm not saying it was or wasn't, but there's no evidence of anything. None. You can't carbon date fossils. They're stone. There's no actual living anything in them. You can't carbon. No one knows anything about timelines. This is all nonsense. It was invented by the Royal Society in 1841. You can look this up. I know people that have degrees in which they're paying off debt to this day in paleontology. They have whole degrees in things that are lies. It's like those things that you're looking at right there, those skeletons don't exist. They've never found a single skeleton like that. They're all invented. All. Was there giant beasts that used to exist that don't exist? Yeah, I think there was dragons.
Related to the dinosaur story is this idea that we can carbon date things back millions of years. So part of my career, I've built data models, I've built forecasting models, I've built other types of statistical models. And you can't really build an accurate model unless you have data to validate it. So the models that I worked on were mostly for marketing and sort of staffing things like call centers and direct mail processing things. We had tons and tons of data. The models were incredibly accurate because we could test them with actual data. Hopefully this makes sense. But that's a key thing about validating a model. That's why weather models are actually fairly accurate, because you have so much data. Okay, we have no data from millions of years ago to validate how accurate a carbon dating model is. So there's a formula, right? Which is what a model generally is, saying if I have this element, this carbon, this bone that I've found, I can somehow look at the half-life of this particular thing and figure out how many years old it is, and it goes back millions of years. You can never validate that because we don't have any concrete proof of anything being millions of years old that you would use to validate it. The other assumption, this is kind of a mathy thing, but when you build a model, you have to know how the data is going to trend. So in some cases, you have what's called a linear trend, which is for everything that goes up one in one direction, it goes up one in another direction. Like shoe size and height are generally considered correlated variables, where the bigger your feet, generally the taller you are. So that's something you could validate. It's kind of a basic model that you could build, but you see that there's a direct relationship that when one goes up, the other one goes up. Now, with carbon dating, you can't do that. You don't know that once you get beyond a million years that the trend continues in the same direction. It's so full of assumptions, and we have just been taught our whole life that carbon dating was this accurate way to know that these dinosaurs were from the Paleolithic era, blah, 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 millions of years ago. So I'm here to tell you that I no longer believe that. I think the whole thing was kind of a lie, which is crazy. The extent of the lies, why make up the whole dinosaur thing? I haven't quite figured that out. If you know why they made up the dinosaur thing, let me know. And this might be shocking to you. If you want to argue with me about the dinosaur thing in the comments, feel free. But I'm now beyond believing it. There's just too much stuff that was made up that's impossible to verify. And also, when the predictive programming groups are really trying to sell us on a narrative, and think about how many dinosaur movies there have been, I think there's an agenda there. They really wanted us to believe that there was life before man. Interesting. I'm no biblical scholar, but I think it's pretty much a counter narrative to the Bible stories. All right, last one of the day. This is a weird one too, because it was something we all kind of remember. I think it was not that long ago, but this was this mass shooting in Las Vegas. And it was there's all these people outside at a concert, a country music concert. I think it was Jason Aldean. Is that how you say it? And there was supposedly this one guy from a hotel room who had a ridiculous number of super powerful guns. And this one guy did all this shooting. Yeah, that's kind of another lie. And also, why doesn't the media talk about that? That was like a pretty big deal. And it seemed like that happened. It was pretty dramatic news coverage. And then it sort of went away. And what I have learned is that there was many witnesses who testified or kind of spoke to law enforcement type people that the shooting was coming from different directions, that there was more chaos going on in the hotel, and that Trump was in Las Vegas that time, as was a Saudi prince who owns the Four Seasons, which is at the top floor of Mandalay Bay, which is where this hotel happened. So there was more going on that day than we were ever led to believe. So this, again, just to me confirms that the media is used for specific reasons to tell us stories that they want us to believe. And sometimes things happen before the media management team has time to kind of formulate the narrative, and things get discussed openly, like the Las Vegas shooting. And then the propaganda people come in like, okay, we got to shut this down. We have to quiet this up. They distract us with some other thing. And in the meantime, they want us to forget about it. So why have we never really heard more about the Las Vegas shooting? Seems just like a strange thing. So, all right, those are my lies that I'm uncovering for today. I'll be back if you want with part 3. I got some more esoteric ones, which means they're sort of more out there. A little harder to maybe believe if this is sort of new for you. But I think what's going to happen with all of us as humans is as these lies become uncovered, we start to sort of see the world through a different lens and understand that there has been a very, very coordinated indoctrination program process for all of us for our entire lives to get us to believe certain things, namely that we're not capable of very much, that we need to slave away for money, that even the idea of money, the Federal Reserve note, is actually a thing. It's really a construct that we've just been hypnotized to believe we need this Federal Reserve money to be successful and important and powerful. And it's all been kind of a scam. And we talked last time about the U.S. corporation and the taxation system that has been part of that. And so I'm very honored to be a part of this generation in history where we are uncovering many of these lies and scams. And I'm just chipping the surface. There's quite a few more. And if you like this video, please hit like, and I'll be back with part 3 once I have the rest of those topics ready to talk about. All right. If you don't agree with me, feel free to comment. If you have some lies you want me to cover, put those in the comments as well. All right. See ya.